So I wanted to continue to share just one more time some of my experience of being ordained and living at the Abbey community. I'm still sort of riding a little bit of the wave of exploring monastic life that we had about almost 2 weeks ago. And so I wanted to share a few more insights that have come up in a year that seems to be looking back on life and where I was and where I am and where I might be going. So one of the things about ordained life and living in community, this is time, past, present, and future, yes, is that when you live here, because you don't have a lot of the distractions of lay life, your life gets brought up for a thorough review. And you get to see your life in a whole new light in regards of what you thought and maybe still think what the causes of happiness are, and what you thought and what you still might think what the causes of your suffering and dissatisfaction and disappointment are. And then as you come here and you listen to the Dharma and you practice, you start recognizing what the Buddha taught about what the causes of happiness and suffering are, and you realize how far apart they are. And that part of keeping the precepts and living in community and practicing the Dharma, for me, has been about kind of aligning myself, is getting those misunderstandings about the causes of happiness and dissatisfaction and lining them up to the Buddha's teachings. And so as I look over my life, there have been a few things that have come up that were sort of like internal things and external things that got me here. And I just wanted to share some of these points. The first one is that when Venerable teaches on refuge, the causes of refuge, the first point is about if we don't realize how much we live our life on automatic, we'll never really fully understand how we're not only creating our own suffering for now, but our suffering in the future. And I always kind of saw that as a point, you know. I didn't live my life on automatic. I was very intentional about my life. But I, for some reason, this past EML has brought clearly to my mind how totally, as Venerable Tarpa said, how unawares I was on how much I lived my life on automatic. I hardly ever realized why I was doing what I was doing and saying what I was saying and thinking what I was thinking. I just followed pretty much every impulse, you know. Fed by the ignorance, I followed my craving, I followed my anger, I followed my jealousy, I followed my fear. I had not a clue, you know. So to see within the context of my practice now how much clueless I was about my motivations, and when I was experiencing the suffering and the dissatisfaction, how much I was confused on how I was creating the causes for it. And the other part that was so interesting about looking at this life on automatic is that I didn't really care. I didn't really care why I did what I did and say what I did and thought what I thought. And I needed to care. And that was one of the tragedies that I have sort of unfolded in my life, the total indifference about how my life not only affected my own happiness and discontent, but it really fed and supported other people's confusion about how to create the causes for happiness and suffering. And I didn't know that I was supposed to care. You know, the ethical conduct was just not in the view. The second thing that I really acknowledged, and it was really a profound, deep thing, is that ever since I was a little child, I was like Venerable Jigme so beautifully said, I had this longing. I had this longing to find my own wisdom in a life in a way that was real and was true and which was on my own terms. And not in like a closed-minded way or a tight way, but I wanted to live my life on my own terms, to not have so much of my life be influenced by what other people thought, whatever people thought, and what they thought I should be doing and what I should be saying. That deep inside, I really wanted to own my life. And at the age of 18, I realized that living at home where I was not going to be able to find that wisdom. And so I left home at 18. In my search for wisdom, I found myself at the age of 18, and for the next 25 years, pretty much flying by the seat of my pants. which is in some level a wisdom practice. Because you learn a lot about living outside your comfort zone. And you really try to figure out who you are, why you're doing what you're doing. So on one level, it became a wisdom practice for me. And on another level, it was a crash and burn practice, of which I also practiced in those 25 years. And the search went on for decades. I had a lot of dead ends, I had a lot of false starts, I had a lot of detours. I got lost over and over again on all sorts of spiritual paths. I was pretty much a cat chasing her tail. And so when I first heard the Dharma, the first teaching that I ever heard Venerable teach in Seattle was on precious human life. And that place where that longing to find my own wisdom got touched. There was something about what she said that night that I said, there's something about what I just heard that might help find this wisdom that I'm looking for. After all of my efforts for the previous 25 years did not bring that wisdom, so I figured, what did I have to lose? Because I longed to be wise, I longed to be skillful, I wanted to be compassionate, tolerant of myself and others, and at the same time, I had this stubborn resistance and fear of doing the work that required. I mean, this is where I really get to see my fundamental laziness was way back when, because I had a clue that I wasn't doing it right, but I didn't have the wherewithal, and I had a huge resistance and fear of doing the work to find out what that wisdom was for myself. And that, and to deeply care about the whys of my life. Why am I doing what I'm doing? Why am I here with these people? Why am I living here? Why am I opening my mouth and saying this? That's what the wisdom of what I was looking for was, the whys of my life, rather than this, meandering and reckless wandering that got me into all sorts of trouble. So I had this deep care of wanting to discover this wisdom and this resistance of doing the work to be able to find it. Crazy thinking. It has a lot of push, pull, come here, go away, come here, go away, push, pull. And this is the mind that I brought to the Abbey in 2004. And so the main purpose of living here has really helped me to overcome, first of all, the fear of being wrong, of making a mistake, of looking inside myself to see what's going on in there, and being responsible for that. And the resistance to thinking really, really big. Thinking really, really vast. And thinking outside the box that I had invariably constructed around myself in those 25 years of searching. And that box, when you get here to the Abbey, it soon becomes apparent that you have to dismantle the box. You cannot live in the Dharma, in this community, in robes without dismantling that box, which is nothing but constructs, misconceptions, wrong views, erroneous thinking, ignorance. The entire box is constructed of thoughts. And after 25 years, I had such a strong belief that that box was who I was. And that you can't stay hiding here at the Abbey. That box has got to come down. And so what I did over the past 12 years is I start working on dismantling the box, because it has no foundation. It's built on nothing, because it's not built on how things actually exist. So some days I'd be tearing a little corner off, just barely a little piece. Some weeks I would tear off a pretty good piece off that box. And then 2 weeks later, I'd be looking for the duct tape, going, put it back on. Too fast, too big, too scared, or whatever, But the dismantling is a huge piece of practicing the Dharma community as a monastic. And what happens over time is what I started to notice, and this is fairly recent because I was so self-absorbed. First self-absorbed in my 8 worldly concerns and self-absorbed in my own getting my box down, is that I started to see that everybody in the community had their own version of this box. And that they were doing their best using the Dharma and their precepts and living in community to dismantle their boxes as well. And what started to happen was this tenderness, this kind of wow, look at their box. To see that there was this simpatico of knowing how we've constructed these things and how they had to come down. and that you have to look at the material that you use to make the box, and that we have total permission in this space to take it down. And that we have to come from our side to choose to do that. So some of the wisdoms, this search for wisdom has come to an end. It's not like I have wisdom, but the searching, the looking, the meandering, the false starts, the detours, getting lost, is really come to an end since I've been here. I'm learning about the wisdom on. Maybe I can get some clarity about what the causes for happiness, long-term, short-term, are. I'm kind of getting a little bit of that. I'm getting to understand what the causes of my suffering are a little bit, what to abandon, what to cultivate, getting clear about that. I'm getting some wisdom about, well, if that's getting a little bit clearer, maybe you can discipline your mind now. Maybe you can stabilize it on a virtuous object. Maybe you can get to concentrate a little bit. So there's this wisdom of being able to cultivate a disciplined mind. And then there's this wisdom that says, well, this box was constructed out of thoughts, erroneous ways of thinking. How do things really exist? So the wisdom of understanding emptiness and how reality truly exists, it's this whole other piece that at first I was terrified of, totally intimidated about. But even the little bit that I've heard in the past number of years has helped me to take that box down. It still is not down. It will not be down, maybe almost down in this life, I hope. But boy, the wisdom of hearing the teachings on emptiness, the teachings on bodhicitta, those two together, the tools that I feel that I have to dismantle these conceptions about life, myself, the world, my potential, everybody's potential. I just feel that I finally have found what I'm looking for. So, and the beauty about these kinds of wisdoms is that they're not linear. I can work on all of them. I can work on the wisdom of my ethical conduct. I can work on the wisdom of cultivating conventional and ultimate bodhicitta. I can work on my concentration. I can work on my generosity. I can work on anything that calls that I need to work on. So the wisdom of having all those tools for the long-term goal of not only my own awakening, but so that all sentient beings are able to dismantle these boxes. So I'm not there yet, but my search on how I'm going to do that is over.